Hello, everyone. We're just come up on 3 o'clock this afternoon. And just to remind you all, it's the 20th of January and there is a big inauguration in the US today. So our speaker today is an American. So I think it's good that we have her today and interesting, and I'm going to ensure that she can leave us by 4:15 so that she can go and celebrate. So we're looking today basically at sourcing and how buyers are now sourcing interesting craft and design pieces for their end clients. There's a lot of virtual in the environment at the moment. In fact, it's nearly all virtual. And we're going to look at virtual shows and how buyers are using virtual shows and using other channels, because we felt it was important to widen it out. Siobhan does an awful lot of sourcing for various end clients, and they range across all areas of the industry. So she's very keen that you put any questions you have, please, in the chat box, and we will deal with them at the end. And with that, I'd like to hand you over to Siobhan. Welcome, Siobhan.
Thank you, Emer, and thank you to the Design Council for holding this webinar and for inviting me to speak this afternoon. And thank you to all of you attending for taking the time out of your busy lives to join me this afternoon as well. So as Emer said, I'm going to be talking about sourcing, and not just sourcing, but sourcing in the age of COVID. And I'd like to think of this as a buyer's guide, but also a seller's guide, because for a seller to truly, or a wholesaler to truly understand the process of a buyer, I think it's really important for them to put themselves in the buyer's shoes. And just a little bit about myself. I know Emer mentioned what I do briefly. I have been a buyer for over 20 years. I have bought products in many different categories, from accessories and beauty products to Irish craft to even sporting goods at the start of my career. And the reason I say this to you is because I think it's important to understand that a buyer and a true buyer can really buy anything as long as they find a passion for it. So to be effective, they need to find something about the category that they're purchasing for. They need to find some passion within that. And I've not only bought across several categories, but I've also held many different roles in different formats. So I've been a department store buyer. I've also bought for a tourist focused multiple. In my current role as, I also do product development and sourcing for several different clients, but my current role is as a buying director, creative director for a subscription box. So that gives me another little layer to my buying experience. And I just kind of want to talk about the processes and practices of a buyer. And, you know, they've changed over the years. I should say that I suppose the core processes and the core job or role remains the same, but they start to evolve, and sometimes it's in a really, and hopefully in a really organic kind of way. And other times when we're faced with economic downturns or pandemic like we are in the midst of right now, you're sort of pushed into it. So let's start. So I know this seems very basic, and you're probably either rolling your eyes, saying, you know, why do I need to, I already know what a buyer does, or you're asking yourself, why is she asking me this question? I've taken an hour out of my time to sit here and listen to this. I already know what a buyer does. Yes, and I'm sure you do. And even some of you have probably, in some capacity, acted as a buyer at some point. But I think, as I said earlier, that it's really important to sometimes step away from what your main role is as a creative, as a person who makes products in whatever category that may be, to kind of step away from that role and to put yourself in the role of the person purchasing your products, and I'm not the end customer here. And you may be saying a buyer is just there to buy my products and then to sell them. And you would be right. That is absolutely, that's the long and short of it. They are there to buy and then to sell. But you do them a great disservice if you hold that very narrow view. I think what sometimes gets lost, and this does vary widely across categories. There are certainly different processes for a buyer who buys white goods as opposed to a buyer who buys fashion. But a buyer in general is a creative person. And not only are they a creative person, but they have a creative vision. So whether they are a department store buyer, a buyer for a multiple, a buyer for their own store, a buyer for an online retailer, whatever format their buying role takes, they have a creative vision. And it's important for potential partners to understand, if we want to be successful working together, to understand what that creative vision is. So buyers are looking to create this vision. They're looking to create or tell a story, create a journey for their customers. So whether it's in a bricks and mortar format or online. Each individual brand and product plays a part in the overall story being conveyed. And the collection of products that they purchase becomes this cohesive work in order to draw their customers in, to keep the customers, if it's bricks and mortar, to keep them browsing for longer, to take that customer on a journey through their store, on a little path of discovery. Or if it's an online experience, to keep that customer browsing longer. And it becomes this really lovely marriage, if you will, of your creative vision with the store, the buyer's creative vision. That it's that combination that really appeals to the customer. So that's why I kind of wanted to go through what a buyer does. And we're looking to this creativity obviously is key. Now, on the other side of it, the buyer has to be commercial, right? So with all the loveliness of creativity has to be balanced out by commerciality. And that's where their business head has to come into play. And it is, as I have written here on the slide, a buyer marries their creative vision with their commercial savvy. So they look at each product, at the potential of each brand, how it works within the overall product selection, how it works within their overall creative vision. And I suppose they want to make sure that each brand, each product has an opportunity to not only succeed, but to complement their other products. Okay. So what are buyers looking for? And this hasn't changed. Buyers are looking for, they're looking for interesting products that align with their creative vision. So this is a no-brainer, we know that. Yeah, they're looking for products that sell, for sure. So we're looking for new and exciting. Every season, usually a buyer will go out saying, okay, they will look at how each brand has performed during the previous season. They will say, okay, I had sell-throughs, just to get into the sort of brass tacks of it. They'll look at, what kind of sell-through each brand achieved, how successful it was. Did it work? Did they compete in a strange way with other brands? How did the overall package move? And with that information in hand, they can go out and say, okay, I know that maybe 70% of my purchasing this season is going to be from current brands. Really good performers, brands that I've been working with and that I've built relationships with that may have some newness. So that's great because we're always looking for that. And then I have a little bit of budget left over for something new, something exciting, something that I can take a little bit of a calculated risk on. And all good buyers will take risks. So you don't risk your 100% of your purchase. You take calculated risks. You say, this percentage, I'm willing to bet on this, that this is going to be the new up and comer. So it's that balance of new and exciting with proven and reliable. And of course, we're always looking for great quality and competitive prices. And then when I say, I know, competitive prices can say, God, she's talking about inexpensive or, cheap, and it's not what I'm talking about. When I say competitive prices, or when people say, and it's thrown around a lot, and value for money, I think it's oftentimes misunderstood or misused because it's a very subjective term. Value for money only means that the customer values something, they appreciate it, they're willing to spend the money on it. I say competitive prices because I want to make sure that what I'm purchasing from my suppliers, that other brands aren't creating the same or similar at much lower prices. So we want to be in the same, in the same pool. We want it all to make sense. So again, if you guys have any questions about these, please at the end feel free as I go through this. So here I'm obviously being a little tongue-in-cheek here because I would never imply that purchasing is easy. But yeah, sure, it's easy because all I have to do, I mean, what better job? I like to always, when people talk about what a buyer does, I always like to bring my mother into this. And I love my mother and she appreciates that I work hard. But anytime I would be preparing to go to trade shows, or, I might be going to Paris or to London, and she said, oh, how lovely you're going shopping. And I love to shop, I do, but attending trade shows is not the same as going shopping for yourself. And so that's why I'm being a little bit tongue-in-cheek here. When the buyer does get their product assortments right, it does look easy. And sometimes it happens without really thinking about it consciously. You go out to you do your purchasing. When I was an accessories buyer and buying beautiful scarves and beautiful handbags and all sorts of gorgeous products, it sometimes amazed me that you would go out with an idea of what you wanted for the season, and then when everything would come in, it would all just work so perfectly. It would merchandise really well together. And you kind of sit back and you'd say, God, I don't remember actually having a plan to purchase these colorways that have seemed to have worked. Obviously it's a combination of what's on trend, what's available, but as you spend time, and this would be the same for yourselves when you're creating collections, the longer you spend doing the work, I suppose the more second nature it comes. So it sort of happens in a really organic way. I also, products and ranges need to complement each other. Some of this stuff I've already mentioned. And this is really important. You don't want, I as a buyer, I don't want to fill my shop floor or my website with the exact same products with different brands. And now I know you might say, but they're not the same. Yes, But what you want to make sure is that you have variety. That doesn't mean that I can't have more than one soap or handmade soap brand. It doesn't mean that I can't offer more than one jeweler that works with silver. It doesn't mean that. It means that you want enough variety in there that when your customers either browse your website or take that journey through your bricks and mortar store, that they see variety, but that nothing is jarring. It all makes sense. They're complementing each other, but they're not cannibalizing sales from each other, because obviously as a buyer you want all of your brands to succeed. We want really great sell-throughs for all of our brands. The ranges tell a story to their customers, and this happens through clever merchandising. Whether it's clever merchandising in a physical store, or whether it's creating that, or creating that vision online, which can be a little bit trickier for sure. And pricing should fit within the environment. So I kind of hate this applying a good, better, best model, but it does work. And I mean, we don't have to kind of freak out over it. I don't mean that I have to have something inexpensive and then I have my expensive and I have something in between. It kind of works like that to make it really simple. But I suppose what it means is if you have a customer coming into your store, everyone wants something beautiful, and everyone should be able to buy something beautiful. And if that means that you have a range and you have something, you have your top of the line beautiful vase that you've created, but you also have smaller pieces that are a little bit more accessible. I want to buy into your brand. I can't today afford this stunning vase that you clearly spent ages on, but I can take a little bit of your brand home in, maybe your lovely soap dish or something like that, or an espresso cup. So it's kind of just making sure that you have enough within your collection to make it more accessible to all of those who are inspired by beautiful craft. I hope you can see this. It looks a bit light on my computer, but it's a path of discovery, a buyer's journey. So we're not going to spend a lot on this particular slide because it's really just an introduction to what we're doing now. I mentioned the trade show. So, and I think probably, I was the accessories, beauty, and fragrance buyer for Cleary's for many, many years. And as an accessories buyer, I would have every January, from January through to the end of March, traveled several times to London, traveled to Paris at least twice, to Copenhagen, and then all over the city, all over Dublin to appointments. That's almost 3 months that you're actually you're not in the business. You're not actually on the shop floor. Now, it does have an effect on a department store buyer, but it has an even greater effect on an owner operator, a person, a male or female that owns their own gift store that actually has to, they have to lug themselves up to showcase on a Sunday because it's the only day that maybe they close, or they have to close the shop altogether because they need to go find new brands. They need to make appointments. Your diary would be filled. And then you have to do it all over again come July. And the seasons, those buying seasons are constantly extending, getting longer and longer, and coming more and more forward. So, July, August, and into September, again, you're out on the road and you're purchasing. Now, I'm not going to say, oh, boo-hoo, for me, what a terrible life. No, it's fabulous to be able to experience that and to be able to find new products and meet the amazing people designing them. So, I'm definitely not feeling sorry for myself, but I suppose this sort of this sort of sets us up to where we are right now, when those trade shows aren't happening in their current form or in their normal format, or people are time poor, and they just can't do that, but they still need to grow their business. They still need to wow their customers with new products. So what happens when a buyer can't travel? This is my personal favorite slide, because this is really, and I'll be kind of tell you that this is really how I do my purchasing today. How are buyers seeking out new suppliers, new products, etc.? The internet is a buyer's best friend, and I can't stress this more. It's so important. It is an endless resource of design, products, and ideas. So like I said, sometimes it's impossible to travel, or it's just inconvenient, or it's just really expensive. So the internet has been instrumental to a lot of buyers. And for myself, I have been using the internet to find new brands for many years. And even as my capacity to buying accessories and buying handbags, and the fact that I'm from New York and I'm from Brooklyn, so I was always interested in purchasing small leather brands from Brooklyn. But I didn't really travel to New York shows as a Cleary's buyer. So I had to do it through the internet. I had to seek out brands. I had to contact them via email, look at line sheets over email. And you know what? Sometimes it didn't work, but a lot of times it did. And I think when people are used to purchasing different types of products, they become very familiar with what they need, what their store needs, what something will look like on their shop floor without actually seeing the physical products. I'm not saying that it's the best way to do it, but sometimes it's the only way to do it. And we have to make do sometimes, and it can work gloriously. So supplier websites and social media channels, yes. So they're a favorite and fantastic way to see if a brand fits your needs. So today, and not today, I mean, presently, I purchase for a subscription box that I change a theme each month. So this means I'm constantly looking for new products, There's no longer a buying season from January to March for me. It's an ongoing affair. So I use the internet, I use brand websites and their social media channels as an invaluable resource of information. It's also a really wonderful way to check out your competition. So normally when buyers go to Paris, or they go to New York, or they go to London, or wherever they go, they take a few hours out of their time at the trade fair to shop the competition. They will go into whatever lovely stores around and see if there are new brands, something new and exciting, something interesting, something that might work for their customer in their store. Again, it's always been something that buyers have done. Sometimes they go on shopping trips, or this competitive shopping trips as a separate from their trade fair schedule. Again, that is expensive. That is time consuming, expensive. It takes you away from your floor, and it's just not practical today. So how can you be prepared for the buyers? And when I talk about how I love, and it's a personal favorite for me to use the internet as a purchasing tool, I would like to say that I know for a fact that many of my peers also use the internet as a tool. And it's not just the supplier websites and their social media channels, but it's also maybe interesting magazine or online magazine articles. You know, maybe you follow certain people on Instagram that might, you know, have a little insight into what's new and what's wonderful. You know, there's so many different ways that you can find what you're looking for. Often it's just, for me, a theme that I've come up with, and I'll put a keyword in. I have an idea of something that I would like, and sometimes it takes you on this little winding path of discovery, and you might come across something that you never would have found otherwise. Something or someone or some brand that's really off the beaten track, but truly lovely and really exciting to find something like that. So to prepare for that, you've got to make sure that your website and your social media channels are tip-top shape. You've got to make sure that they effectively tell your story, that they're really reflective of your brand. And as you know, this is even more important now that people aren't able to travel. That so many businesses are closed. Is your photography showing your products to their best? Showing your products the way that conveys your story and their value. So that's really important. Is the environment created on your website reflective of the prices that you're charging? Does your content reflect your inspiration? I think this is really key. Make it personal. I'm not saying put your life story on there, but make it personal. Share your passion. Sharing this passion actually adds value to your products. For me, I use a lot of that. I will use a lot of your personal stories when I create my themes, because our customers are Americans, Irish Americans for the most part. I should say of Irish descent for the most part. We do have some that just aren't interested in Irish culture. But what really draws them to the box and to the individual brands or products within the box is really understanding and learning about the personal stories behind those products. Basic things to remember: your website is beautiful, but you're not getting traffic. Why? So you've done everything right. People aren't coming to your website. So you need to learn to get your site to the top through search engine optimization. Now, I'm not an expert in this, but I know the Design Council has held fabulous webinars for search engine optimization and getting your website ready, and how to really use your social media channels to great effect. But do engage and be active on your social media channels, but in a way that reflects your brand. Please, no political statements. Keep that for your personal sites. We don't want to, we just want to engage with you on your product and the personal stories behind those products. And then share every little bit of good news that you have. Share your photographs, share your mentions, your posts, share your awards, brag about yourself. I really encourage this. Honestly, I know, and I'm sorry about the generalization, but I know Irish people don't like to, I think, pat themselves on the back or talk themselves up, but this isn't the time for modesty. It's time for you to shout out about your achievements, shout out about the beautiful work that you're doing, and the awards or whatever else that you have received because of it. Don't be afraid of it. Right. So we get to the virtual showroom, beyond the physical showroom. So I'm actually just going to talk about the cons for a second. Normally I would start with the pros, but let's get the bad out of the way. Okay, so you know, you were planning to show at Showcase, and for me now, where I used to travel to several trade shows, Showcase is my main event now, so I can't go. Uh, so you know, what do we do? Do we just fold up shop and then, you know, that's it? No new products for 2021? No, absolutely not. So what about virtual showrooms? Um, Okay, so you miss the social aspect of it. And there is something to be said about the social aspect of a trade show, not only for buyers. Buyers get to meet their peers there. They also get to meet their current suppliers and new suppliers for sure. But it is a really great place for networking, usually. It's also a great networking tool, I imagine, for brands, for suppliers, definitely. You know, to talk about maybe what's been going on with them, who they're meeting, maybe some interesting new clients that they might like to share details on. So yeah, you're missing that. But what else? What else are we missing out? So you're not interacting, or I said you're not interacting with your peers, but you're also, I suppose, the whole show is less tactile. Right now, maybe that doesn't, it may not mean as much for you, but it's, I suppose that's more affecting the actual buyer. But for you, that does have a drawback, because some buyers might be a little bit more reticent to purchase when they can't actually feel a product in person, feel it, see it, smell it, if it's a soap or a beauty product. But let's turn our attention to the pros, because the pros vastly outnumber the cons. So I think this is kind of a no-brainer. We've already talked about it. It's less expensive. It's less expensive for the buyer or the buyer's company, because they don't have to travel. It's less expensive for the supplier because they don't have to pay for those. I'm sorry, Emer, I know they're really expensive stalls and setups. What else? They are more time consuming. A physical trade show is more time consuming. Virtual trade show, you know what? You have your meetings. You schedule your meetings. This is who I want to see. They definitely have to be more well thought out, I think. It's not a buyer walking into the trade show, doing that first once around, and then going back again by maybe whatever caught their eye. You do miss that from the actual physical show, but this time you have a little bit more thoughtful, your process is a little bit more thoughtful. And of course, your meetings are more personal, they're more private, and they're tailored. And I think, you know, that's a really important thing. You know, every buyer's been to a show where there's a super busy stand and you want to get onto it, but every single time you come by, it's busy. Now, what happens? Yeah, you may keep on going back, or you may just give up, honestly, if you find something else that's a little bit, you know, a little bit more manageable or workable. And of course, I think that it's really important to remember that if a buyer is contacting you for your virtual showroom or to make an appointment through your virtual trade show, that they are really interested. They aren't just stopping by just to pick an item up or just have a little sneaky peek. They are actually interested in your products. It doesn't mean that they're going to purchase straight away, but what it does mean is that they do have an actual interest, and they are making the effort. But now, the same as you had to prepare for buyers finding you through the internet, you also need to prepare for them when you are meeting them virtually. So let your space tell your story. And I know that for many of you that will be preparing to go live with your virtual showcase, and I wish you all the best of luck with that, that you've hopefully had lots of help preparing your space and making sure that the space that you're able to show, while it may be limited, you can use it to your best effect to really help that space tell your story. And I'm going to skip actually this second one to go to my third point. Research your clients beforehand so you can really personalize your appointments. This is key. This is absolutely key. If you have a set of appointments, go do some research on that retailer. See what they're all about. See if, and now I'm not saying make preconceived decisions about whether you should supply them or not. I wouldn't make those decisions until I've actually sat down with the customer and talked about what they want. But doing a little bit of research allows you maybe to tailor your offer slightly. So if you are meeting with a gallery, what you prepare for that meeting might be slightly different if you're meeting for a gift shop. So take that little bit of time and prepare yourself. Now, this goes hand in hand with that preparation. Anticipate questions and ask your own questions. Most likely, you're going to get the same questions that you would from your physical appointments. You're going to be asked about price. You're going to be asked about lead times, about what stores maybe you're stocked in, about what your minimum order is possibly, about, you know, any number of normal questions. But ask your own questions, and don't be afraid to ask kind of quirky questions or things about, you know, how are you going to display my products? You know, depending on what kind of shop or online business they are. So don't be afraid to ask those questions. Or, you know, a very typical question from a supplier would be, oh, do you mind telling me what other kind of brands that you stock? Remember, some businesses may be just starting out, or maybe they're trying to pivot in another direction, and which is why I really encourage potential suppliers, brands, to not make rash judgments about buyers that they sit down with. Listen to them, try to understand what they're trying to do, and then work together to see if your visions, you know, kind of match. Okay, so it's a two-way street. Don't wait for business to come your way. This kind of goes back to my my internet search as a tool. And I know that some of you do this. I know in my time in my other buying roles that, and currently, that I would have suppliers contact me for potential business. This is always encouraging. Don't be discouraged by the pandemic. Businesses still have to run. Businesses are still looking for new and exciting. And I suppose, as it's more difficult for you not being able to see those customers in your physical trade show, that becomes a slight difficulty for the buyers as well. So why not be proactive? Why not seek out new business? Why not, you know, use the internet to find interesting retailers? And this actually does lead me back to kind of how you do this, how you go on this path of discovery. And I mentioned it briefly about putting in a keyword. Say, for instance, I had decided to do a theme on the goddess Aramid. And I said to myself, okay, I want my theme to be all about healing, all about making the soul and the body, you know, the mind calm and peaceful. And what kind of products, you know, do I put in there? So I start searching for that. I start searching for anything to do with this healing goddess, anything to do with healing the body, and I look for brands that fit that. Um, sometimes I don't have a theme. I see a product that I think, God, this is really beautiful, and how can I fit that in? And I create a theme around that. But both ways, what I do, I use the internet as my tool. I may have found a supplier with a product that I love. I look at that supplier. I go to their brand directory or their stockists, and then I start looking at the different stockists. Oh, I wonder what other kind of products or what other kind of brands do those stockists carry? And all of a sudden I'm moving into different areas, and I find interesting brands in these retailers, and they bring me all around. It's really cyclical. It's really interesting. It can bring you to places that you wouldn't have found otherwise. So it's really important to make sure that you are listed as a stockist on your supplier's websites. I really encourage that to be as helpful as possible as well with photography, if you have something that's really particularly beautiful. So again, don't wait for the business to come to you. Do that research in reverse. Look for retailers that you think are good fits. And then when you contact them, you can really tailor your approach, because you've already done the legwork. You've already know what their business is. You already kind of see what other kind of brands that they stock, and you can really understand where your business or where your products would fit in their overall selection. And because you can see what other brands they stock, you can again look at those brands. What other brands that are similar to yours, where are they stocked? These are other potential customers, and they can be from within Ireland, or they can be online businesses, or they could be across the seas. So again, being proactive and using the internet as your ultimate research tool. And then, so finally, and I wasn't necessarily going to talk about negotiation here, but I think it can be a real bugbear when it comes to the differences between buyers and wholesalers, buyers and brands. So I do want to just touch on negotiation a little bit. It's a really essential part of any business between a buyer and a brand. And sure, it's the sort of nitty gritty. It's not the nice part, but it is essential. And of course, when I say negotiation, everyone is going to look at that little box there at the bottom of the screen where I have discounts, right? And I know everyone's, oh God, here she goes with the discounts, looking for something, looking for my hard-made products, my designed products that I've spent my life's work making, and I'm not speaking light of it. I understand that. And she wants money off. Look, the thing about it is that negotiation, a buyer does have to ask for discounts. And I want to put that out there. A buyer, it is their job to ask for a discount. It doesn't mean that if you can't give that discount, or you can't give that discount in the traditional way, as in actual money off, that they're not going to go ahead with the order. There are loads of different variables to think about, to take into account when trying to understand discounts, and what you can afford and what your retailer will be happy with. So, I mean, it's all about building relationships here. So let's look at some creative ways or tactics that you can use when you can't offer an actual discount. And we'll go back to discounts again. Merchandising and training. This is a great one. Especially if you have a product that is, maybe it's a skincare range. It's really essential that whoever is selling your product understands it. They need to understand what the different products are for, how they're used in conjunction, the history behind your product, how you made this beautiful brand, you created this beautiful skincare beauty brand at your kitchen table. They need to know all that. All of those are really useful skills when selling your product. And the more sales that their team gets from your products, the happier that buyer is going to be, and the more likely they're going to go back and buy from you again and again and again. So it's an investment. And it can be done virtually, which is great. Now I know you might say, well, stores aren't even open. And yes, you're right, but they will reopen. So I'd like you to keep that as a little tool or a little bonus that you can offer to customers or buyers that are looking to purchase your products who are saying, oh, but I need a discount. You say, well, I don't have any margin to work on, but I can offer you this. I can offer you visual merchandising assistance. Maybe they're an online business. I can offer you some really beautiful photography that you can use on your website. Marketing collaborations, we can do some sort of competition, some sort of joint competition on our social media channels. You know, maybe there's some, you know, a free of charge gift you might have that, you know, can work. There are also things that you can do. Now this really does depend on the kind of product it is, but it could be maybe a stock swap. Obviously, you know, these things are a little bit more technical, and you have to make sure that your stock is at all times protected, and that you're guaranteed that you're never taking back stock that is that hasn't been, or that's not in pristine condition. So these are all options, and all, you know, things that are a little bit different. You can also, depending on the store, depending on the size of the business. And before I finish that point, I do want to say one thing, that you know, it can be, I suppose, you know, you think of a big store and you think they have a lot of buying power. You think of a small gift shop and you're like, oh, they're only going to buy a few little things. Don't be fooled by that. It doesn't always work that way. Sometimes it does, yes, for sure. But you would be surprised, small shops sometimes can be your biggest customers. So don't, I suppose, don't make those preconceived decisions about the potential of a customer and what their potential spend will be. There are also things you can do, maybe exclusive products or product collaborations. You can also have a range within your overall range that, for instance, if I want to purchase a beautiful cup from you, and I say, is there any way that you can give me a discount on this because I'm buying so many of them? And you say, well, actually, I don't, I'm buying the cup and I'm buying a little mini plate. And you can say, I don't have margin. I can't give you a discount on this cup, but I can give you a small percentage on the plate. I'm happy. You know, I'm happy. I've gotten something. I can go back to my boss and say, yes, I've managed to get a little bit of discount. You're happy because you still have your margin as well. So, and then that kind of goes into discounts as well. So it's just about being a little bit more creative. I did forget to mention something when I was talking about creating visions and creating stories, and how they can be really effective. And I wanted to mention, and normally I wouldn't mention a particular business, but I did want to mention one store, and I'm sure you're all aware of or familiar with it, the Irish design shop on Drury Street. And the reason I bring this particular store up, and I know that they have their bricks and mortar on Drury Street, and they have their website as well. And again, the reason I bring this up is because both their bricks and mortar and their website really are very, very effective in creating that vision. When you walk into their store, or whether you're browsing their website, which, by the way, is simple but really easy to navigate, which is important. They their passion for Irish design is obvious. But what I really love about it is that they're clearly very democratic buyers as well. It appears to me that not only that they don't only give, I should say, pride of place to the more expensive, higher end products, but also to the smaller products. So whether you're a handmade soap or beeswax candles, your product is just as important as a really beautiful piece of jewelry or a gorgeous throw. So regardless of price here, it's about them embracing their passion for Irish design and craft. And I think that speaks volumes for them in both formats of their business. And that was meant, I didn't mean to mention that earlier on. But I suppose just to leave you with a sort of idea of what I think is best practice. And there are so many across Ireland and further afield as well, but just to give you an example. Another example of an amazing resource tool for me is the Design Ireland website, because I love the way they really, they have obviously lovely products, including the bios on the designers, but also links directly to their websites. It's a fantastic tool for any buyer, a fantastic tool for any buyer. So I'm going to leave you there, and I apologize if I've left anything out, and please, any questions that you have, please let me know.
Siobhan, thank you so much for that. We have a number of questions in. The first thing is, it's terrific, and I'm delighted that you find the Design Ireland website of use to you as a source. Today is the closing date for applications, so it's timely that you mentioned it. And I actually didn't ask Siobhan, she brought it up herself, and she cited there the Irish Design Shop. They do absolutely superb work. So do a large number of Irish small craft and design retailers. So you've brought forward very pertinent points, very optimistic, because sometimes I think that we forget that this day will end and we will have learned an awful lot from it. We will have a whole variety of tools that we can use, a mixture of everything. So, to save money and time and everything, we can use a bit of virtual and a bit of bricks and mortar. And I think, that there will be an awful lot of good has come out of it. Also with today, we have Brexit that we will be dealing with in a few weeks' time, and I want everybody to tune in. But today we have the American inauguration, and in view of Brexit and the fact that America's in a more optimistic place, and there are 328 million of you, and that's not counting the diaspora. I don't know how many American diaspora there are, and that's nearly the size of the European Union. Well, European Union at this point, minus Britain, is probably about 400 million, but it's a market that that is there. I mean, I know an awful lot of our clients work with the US. It needs a certain and different skill set, but I actually think having to work in this virtual environment is training people for that market. And I think that market is also a changing place at the moment. So that's something that we should all look at. And less of me, I'm now going to turn to the excellent questions that people have put forward. And I'm going to take them in order. Okay, do you think buyers of craft are currently in a shopping mode, even with the lockdown and most shops closed and uncertain of opening times?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a great question, and and without trying to fob that question off, it's hard to know. But what I can say is that if a business wants to succeed and wants to continue to grow, even in this pandemic, they will have to do a certain amount of purchasing. So don't expect the orders that you would have gotten in years past. Not just yet. There will be a certain amount of, I spoke of risk taking, and risk taking is always a really important aspect of any buyer's job. But in times of trouble, whether it's economic downturn, those risks have to be really weighed against what you can actually afford and what you can actually do. So what I would say is that, yes, to a certain degree, for me, because of the kind of business I am absolutely purchasing. For online businesses, those businesses are thriving. They are absolutely purchasing. For gift shops, they may have, don't forget, they may have taken this downtime to open their own website so they could continue to sell. So, yes, to a large degree, I think that they are in shopping mode, to use my mother's term. They're always looking for something new. And by the way, do remember that just because a buyer doesn't, you may have made contact with a buyer, just because the buyer doesn't purchase straight away, doesn't mean that you haven't planted the seed. Sometimes it takes a little bit of nurturing. It takes a little bit longer for something to blossom. It doesn't mean that it's not going to work. It doesn't mean that that order isn't going to come to fruition. It just might take a little bit of time. And we're going to have a bit of that for the next few months. But I try to be as positive as possible, and to answer your question in a really long-winded sort of way. I do think that buyers are in a shopping mode with a little bit of caution.
Okay, thank you, Siobhan. There's another one here which I find very interesting and we'll be dealing with in depth on Friday. We're having a webinar on B2B on websites, okay, and that'll really support people who are doing the virtual showcase. Okay, here's the question. Do buyers prefer to buy craft design products via B2B websites or directly via Instagram, Facebook, direct contract through the website?
Okay, well, I can tell you, really, I wouldn't like, and this might sound a bit strange given what I've just said. I like to discover brands through websites. I like to discover brands through Instagram, through social media channels. I like to then chat on the phone, email. So try to really, I said, have a chance to personalize our interaction as much as possible. So I would rarely go onto the website. And lots of businesses do have a wholesale section where you can go in and you can place your order like that. And that works for certain brands and for certain products. But I like to use it as a research tool, and then I send an email, make contact, get on the phone, chat about what we can do for each other. So I think it's a nice combination of new and old. Does that make sense?
That's a good answer. I have another one here. As a small independent designer maker, okay, how do I approach shops to offer my products and make my brand attractive to them? Do shops deal directly with the designer maker who's starting out?
Absolutely. That depends on the buyer and on the shop. I mean, I would like to think that there are many beautiful stores around Ireland that actually focus on supporting emerging talent. And I would think, and as I spoke earlier about, about 70% of the purchase being the reliable, it's that 30%, or maybe it's 20% that you're taking the risk on, and that risk is purchasing from an emerging talent. And how do you do that? You use the internet as your tool. Find brands that you think that you align with, that your vision aligns with. Do the research. Where are they stocked? What kind of stores do you think that your product would fit? And make contact with that buyer. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to get back to you straight away or even at all, but you've got to do the legwork. And it is hard. It's not an easy thing to do. Even for me, I'm trying to buy things, and sometimes I have to email or try and contact people several times before I get an answer. So it is a two-way street. But I would say don't be disheartened. I would say do the legwork, do the know before. I like to think of maybe picking 5 stores or online retailers that you really think would benefit from your product. Sometimes you might pick 5 aspirational retailers, someplace where you see yourself in 5 years, and then 5 that, yes, I think that's a sensible place for me to start my business. So, if you take a day to do some great research and really understand what your story is, and then understand what the stories are of the retailers that you're targeting. I hope that answers your question.
Siobhan, I have another one here, and it casts me back to a previous webinar that we did, just to follow on from that. You're getting a lot of thanks, by the way. Everybody thinks it's very helpful and informative. This person would like to know, how would you make, this is you, Siobhan, make first contact? Would you do face-to-face or email and build from there? And I'm going to add to that in a previous webinar, one of our speakers said that, she'd done research into it, that it takes sometimes 14 interactions to start a story, and the communication and the negotiation. And she said, and most people give up at point 3. They think, if I've communicated 3 times and nothing's happened, I'm going to crawl into my shell and be all disappointed. So do you any light to shine on this?
Yeah. There does come a point where you kind of say to yourself, God, I don't think this person wants to talk to me at all. What I do say is don't be disheartened. The very best thing, and yeah, it does, 14 is a little excessive. I think 14 is,
stalking.
Yeah. But for sure, first interaction, or first, I would say I always do email. If I'm looking for a new brand, I do my research. I look at their website. I look at the stores they're in. I look at the products they're doing. I look at any interesting blogs that they've written, or anything that I can sort of eat up and digest and kind of really understand if their product's going to work for me. And then I go to their website. I pick up their wholesale contact details. Please have those details at the ready. Make sure your website makes it easy for people to contact you. I'm not talking about customer complaints. That's a different thing. I'm not interested in that. But make it easy for me, a potential buyer, to contact you. I'm not a private detective. I love your products. You've gotten me that far. Don't make it difficult for me now. So so that's, and if I get a response within a couple of days, I'm delighted with that, and we take it from there. And normally, it really depends on the brand. I'll give them my phone number, because not everyone wants to chat over the phone. But sometimes, for me, what I do is a little bit more complicated. It's not so straightforward. So it's nice to have that personal interaction on the phone. So I would say email a couple of times. A phone call would be nice, and then back to email. How many times you email someone before they answer you? I'm thinking 3 or 4, really, with that, and maybe then give it a rest, and then do it again. Maybe when you have something new, or you've been mentioned in, let's say, the Irish Times, or you won an award someplace. And then you can contact them again with some new information. And that's generally what I would recommend. So
that sounds really good. Today has been really, really helpful, because as we know, a number of people in our audience today are doing the virtual showcase next week. We will have a webinar on Friday on B2B. I'd also like to remind everybody to watch out for our e-commerce bootcamp. That will be, the call out will be going live imminently, I would say in the next week, and that's really to gear up on e-commerce. I'd like to remind everyone that we're here. If you have any queries, please do send me an email. I really appreciate that everybody tunes in. I think that the material is useful. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. And Siobhan, enjoy the rest of the afternoon. And thank you so much for all your insights. Thank you, everyone. Bye. Bye.